Okay, so for this video you need a half dome or a rolled up towel, you need your trusty strap, and then if you happen to have some elastics, you know, if you ever bought a fitness video in the 90s, they all came with their little elastic bands. If you have got any of those anywhere, grab those because those are really useful. And if you haven't, it doesn't matter at all. We can do it perfectly well without. Okay, so starting with the calf stretch then. So your half dome or your towel down onto the floor. And then we're going to place the ball of the foot towards the top, heel down on the floor, and then step your other leg alongside. So again, we're looking for hip width apart, outside edges of the feet as straight as possible. And then just check in, check your jaw for tension, how are your shoulders, where are your ribs? If your ribs are lifted, get those ribs to relax down. Keeping your weight through this heel of the leg that's on the dome, and then notice with this other leg, if this leg is too far forwards, it will make you feel like you're being thrown backwards. So you just want to find a place at which you feel that it's releasing and kind of stretching this calf of the leg that's on the dome. You don't want to be kind of not feeling anything at all, but it doesn't want to be so much that you're struggling to stay here and maintain your really good alignment. So just take a few breaths here, allowing your muscles of your calf to just release. And then let's switch and do the same on the other side. So top of the foot towards the top of the dome, heel down on the floor, and step your other leg to hip width apart. Notice if it feels different one side to the other. Quite often we have one side that's quite a bit tighter than the other side. All of the same rules, jaw, shoulders, ribs. Keeping your weight through the heel of the leg that's on the dome. Can you take that other leg a little bit further forwards without compromising your alignment somewhere else? And take some deep breaths. And just let everything else go. Good job. All right. Come on off that. Pop your dome just to the side so that you aren't going to fall over it. So our next exercise is the monster walk. And this is where if you have an elastic, you can use the elastic, but it's not essential. So we're going to have feet again hip width apart, and we've got the outside edges of the feet straight. We're going to take little tiny steps to the side, but again, keep your weight back through your heels, and it's just a little step, little step, little step, little step. So think about leading with your heel, keeping your weight back through your heels. And you don't need a big area to do this, you can just kind of walk nice and slow, but you will feel that you're again working those lateral hip muscles, and just by taking those little steps, keeping your weight back, is going to give you enough resistance. Now if you do have, keep going, but if you do have one of those little elastics, I've just tied this at one end, you can pop these around your ankles or just above your ankles, get a bit of tension on it, and it's exactly the same thing. You're keeping tension on this, and this is just giving you that little bit more resistance. And it really doesn't take long for you to feel those lateral hip muscles, and this is called monster walk. And let's just do a little bit more. Keep going, keep your weight back through your heels, so you're noticing whether your weight is wanting to go forwards into your toes, whether you're wanting to lift your ribs. And check your feet. If you've turned your feet out a little bit, then we've taken the work from those lateral hips and we've brought it around towards the quads. That we tend to use to do everything. All right, are you sick of the monster walks now? They're great for glute strength. Okay, our next exercise, we're going to go back to the half dome and we're going to do the double calf stretch this time. So grab your half dome or your towel again, and we're going to place both feet onto the dome at this time. So again, ball of the foot as high up on the dome as you can manage, hip width apart or wider for the double calf stretch, and then we fold at the hip. Hands can rest on your thighs. Again, checking for tension. I'm going to turn to the side so that you can see what I'm doing with my spine, and I'm not allowing my spine to just kind of round. I'm folding at the hip and maintaining a neutral spine, so my back is still fairly straight. I've not kind of rounded it here, yeah? So thinking about sticking your bottom out. Hi, Freddie. And we're just going to hold here, keeping your weight back through your heels, keep backing your hips up. And then come all the way back up to standing. So from here we're going to go into our pelvic lift. So again, move your arm out of the way so that you're not going to fall over it. And we're going to stand with feet about hip width apart. Have the outside edges of your feet straight, and again back your weight up through your heels. You're going to press all of your weight down into one leg to allow the other side to lift up. And again, all of your weight down into that one side and the other side will just float up. So make sure that you aren't hiking that hip up. You don't want to be using your back. It's really using these standing hip muscles. We're using one of our glute muscles, so it's a glute medius, which is kind of on the side here. So as you press that leg down, you should feel quite a bit of work here. Keeping your weight back through your heels. And we're just doing a few just lift and lowers here. Let's switch and do the same on the other side. Weight back through your heel, press all of your weight down to lift and lower. So it might feel completely different on one side to the other, and you might find that you need to keep putting your foot down. That's okay. Keep checking that your weight hasn't snuck forwards and that you aren't using your back. Alright, and then just let it go, give your legs a little shake. So, if you're familiar with the pelvic lift, which you should be, we have done it before, remember you can always give yourself a little bit of height. You can use a block to stand on, or you can stand on the bottom step and do it just so that you can have more height, unless you've obviously had any issues with your hip, in which case I would stay on the floor and just keep that range a little bit smaller. We're going to come down onto the floor next, so lie down on your back with your knees bent and your feet flat on the floor. So we're lying down on our back. Just take a moment for your spine to settle into the mat, let the back of your pelvis be heavy, back of your rib cage be heavy. And just take a few breaths. Now normally in this position, and I'll tell you to bolster if you need your head lifted to get your ribs down, but because we're going to be lifting the hips, we're not going to have anything under the head here at all. So feet and knees are hip width apart, arms are anchored into the mat down by your side. Take a breath in, and as you exhale, you're going to press into your heels and lift your hips to the ceiling. Now keep your eyes on the ceiling here as well, and then we're going to fold at the hip and just lower back down. So you don't have to come up very high at all here. Ribs stay down, hips are lifting. So when I say ribs stay down, what I mean is I don't want you to lift and then really thrust your ribs. So the ribs just want to stay level with the pelvis the whole time. Keep going, pressing into your heels, lifting your hips, and then just lowering down. You can go nice and slow with the rhythm of your breath here, and you can lift as high as you like, as long as you're keeping the ribs down. So quite often I'll say, right, let's pause at the top, drop your ribs, and can you lift your hips any higher? And we're just going to hold here. Notice if your knees are wanting to splay out to the side, and think about sending your knees straight ahead, and then lower down again. Again, lift and lower. Keep going. Notice where is doing most of the work here. So can you feel that your bottom is working? So your glutes are going to be working to help lift your hips up and controlling back down. We're going to do two more. Last one. And then lower your bottom down. Just bring your knees into your chest. Give your knees a little hug and just rock gently from side to side. So we're going to do that little hip lift again, but this time we're going to see if we can lift a foot away from the floor. If that feels like too much for you, just keep doing the the hip lift as we were. So exactly the same. When you're ready, you're going to lift your hips. They don't have to go all the way to the top. Make sure your pelvis is nice and level. Unweight one foot, and can you lift that foot away from the floor and place the foot back down? Same on the other side. Can you unweight the foot? And then can you lift the leg and place it back down? Just keep switching sides. And what you'll notice in here is whether your pelvis is going to drop as you lift that leg. We're trying to keep the pelvis nice and level. And you don't have to lift your leg really high. You can just lift it just an inch off the floor. Or you don't even have to lift it. You can just kind of elevate it so that you're pressing more weight down into the other side and this foot is just balanced on the mat, or you can maybe just come up onto your toes. So it's just about finding what works for you. You don't want to kind of go too far, bring your knees to your chest and give them a hug. You don't want to go too far and compromise your form. You're much better to practice at maybe a slightly lower level of intensity first, and then you can always build yourself up. We're going to roll onto our side next. So coming onto your side, and we're going to do the clown. Head is propped in your hand, knees in front, feet roughly in line with your spine. So make sure your pelvis is level here. You want your hip bones stacked one on top of the other. And then place your fingertips on that hip bone at the front so that you can check that it's not moving. And we're going to open out the top knee and close it back down. So here we're keeping the pelvis really still. What you don't want is that pelvis rolling back. And again, we're working those lateral hip muscles the same as we were working with our monster walk and with our pelvic lift. So you might be able to open your leg further or smaller, it doesn't really matter. What we're looking for here is that the pelvis doesn't shift and the leg just lifts and lowers. Keep going. We're going to do two more. Last one, and then we're going to keep the knees together. Knees stay down on the floor and then lift your feet. And it's the same movement here. Can you still open out that top knee without letting your pelvis roll while keeping your feet hovering in the air? We're going to do 5 more. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1, and lower down. We're going to give that a little rub, a little pat. If it's aching in this area, then you know that you were doing it right. Let's spin over onto our other side and do exactly the same on the other side. So again, feet roughly in line with your spine, knees are forwards, and make sure that your hips are stacked and you haven't kind of rolled that top hip back. Feet stay down and we open up that top knee. Again, maybe place your fingers on your hip bone so that you can feel whether it's rolling back or not. Keep going. Three more. 2 and 1. Bring the knees together, knees stay down, feet lift. Exactly the same here. Watch that that hip is not rolling back. That hip bone is not moving. Going to do 5 more. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. And lower it down again. Give it a little rub, give it a little pat. Grab your strap next and we will do the strap stretch. Okay, so lie down on your back again. And you're going to place your foot into the strap. Strap wants to be at the base of your toes so that you can pull the front of the foot towards you. But the most important thing is to have your free leg out long, and we really want the back of this free leg down on the mat. So you can see, if I kind of pull this leg really far towards me, this leg is nowhere near the mat. So I have to bring this leg right down to get the back of this thigh in contact with the mat. Sometimes you have to shuffle to get your bottom out of the way, but yeah, you really want this leg down. And if you're not sure, it's really useful to maybe put like a little hand towel under your leg and then see if you can pin it down and try and pull it out, and then that will give you really good feedback as to whether this leg is actually anchored down or not. And then the leg that's in the strap is super floppy. We're going to pull the front of the foot towards us, press the heel away and get that leg as straight as you can. We don't want any slack in the line, and by that I mean any bend in the knee. Because we're trying to release the hamstrings, that leg has got to be straight, and if it's bent, then we're not actually doing anything to the hamstrings, so we're not affecting any change at all. So make sure that leg is straight. And even if it needs to come way down, that's fine, because you're still going to get change here rather than having it higher and having a slight bend in that knee. So once you're happy with your position, keep pulling the front of the foot towards you and just take some deep breaths there. If you do need something under your head, you can place something under your head here. It's only when you're lifting your hips up that we don't want anything under your head. Let's take that leg across the body, so it's going to come across the centre line if that feels okay for you. If you can't bring that leg across because it just doesn't feel good for your hips or for any other reason, just keep it in centre. If it feels okay, we're taking it across the body, but we're not going to let this side lift. So we're keeping our bottom anchored, it's just that leg has come across. Still pulling the front of the foot towards us, still keeping the back of this other leg down. And then we're going to bring that leg back into centre and we're going to switch to do the other side. So, free leg out long, leg in the strap, pulling the foot towards you. Have you got the back of that free leg touching the mat? Do you need to lower your leg down more? You need to adjust, get your bottom out of the way. Okay, so it might be different one side to the other, and we're hoping here that we have a neutral spine so that our hip bones and our pubic bone are on the same level and you've not allowed your pelvis to tilt back, okay? Because again, we need to have the pelvis anchored and the legs straight to actually get a release on the hamstrings, because the same as this puts slack in the line if we have the knee bend, if we've tilted the pelvis, again we're not stretching the hamstrings anymore because we haven't got the sit bone anchored. Pressing the heel away, pulling the front of the foot towards you, letting everything else be relaxed. And then again, can you bring that leg across your body if it doesn't feel right on this side? You can just keep it in centre. You've always got options. You're always doing what feels right for your body right now. And then we're going to bring that leg back into centre and we're going to lower it down. Let's go onto our front now for some hip extension. So pop your strap out of the way and lie yourself down onto your front. One hand on top of the other and you can rest your forehead down onto your hand. I'm going to keep my head up just so that you can hear me. And then we've got our pubic bone anchored into the mat and we're going to tuck the tailbone slightly, which gives us more length through our lower back and stops us from compressing. You can either have your legs squeeze in together or hip width apart, and either of those is fine, whichever feels best for you. From here, you're going to reach one leg away from you, making that leg as long as you can. You're reaching it so much that it's lifted out of the mat, and then you're lowering it down. Same on the other side, reach the leg, make it as long as you can, and lower it down. Keep switching sides. And notice here, as you lift your leg, is your pelvis wanting to twist? Can you keep your pelvis anchored into the mat? And how about those knees? Do you feel like as you lift, that your knee is lifting away from the mat? Or are you just bending your knee and lifting the lower leg? Try and get that knee off. Reaching the leg long, make it as long as you can. And then we're going to push ourselves up and back into a rest position just to stretch out your back. So come up, take your bottom back towards your heels, reach your arms forwards and stretch. We're going to come back onto our front again. Same position, pubic bone anchored, tailbone slightly tucked. Now this time we're going to lift one leg and then we're going to flex the knee and the ankle. So you're pressing the sole of your foot towards the ceiling, and then can you think about lifting your knee pit, the back of your knee, towards the ceiling? Towards the ceiling. Keep going. And we're just going to switch and do the same on the other side. Lengthen that leg long. Reach the other leg lifted out of the mat. Bend the knee. Flex the foot. And can you press the back of the knee towards the ceiling or the sole of the foot towards the ceiling? Trying to keep your pelvis anchored. So for me now, my pelvis is really wanting to lift instead of just the hip reaching back. So you're trying to keep your lower back super quiet and relax. Push yourself up and back into that rest position again. It's quite often, if you don't have very much hip extension, if you aren't able to take your leg behind you very well, using your glutes and your hamstrings, and your lower back wants to do all of the work and your pelvis wants to twist. Okay, we're going to do a little number 4 stretch now. So back onto your back. You're going to bring one leg up and you're going to cross that ankle over your opposite knee. Notice now, as you brought that leg up and over, has it lifted that hip? Are your hips now off? Can you get your hips level? And think about pressing that knee away from you. So this is giving a stretch for that piriformis muscle, which kind of runs diagonally across your cheek. And we're going to keep that foot flexed as well, so that foot is active and it's not just all floppy. And you can stay here, or you can float that standing leg up and hold behind that supporting leg, just to give a little bit more of a stretch. If that doesn't feel nice to you, just keep your foot down. You can absolutely do this with your foot down. And then we're just going to switch and do the same on the other side. Foot is flexed, hips are level, and you're just holding this position first, just seeing how it feels. And if you wish, you can float that standing leg up and hold behind that thigh. Again, that foot is not floppy, and we're sending that knee away. My feet are probably filthy because I've been padding around the back garden all day. Alright. When you're ready, you can let that leg go. Bring both knees into your chest, give your knees a little hug, and just rock gently side to side. Now, if you want to take that number 4 stretch a little bit further, and you can. If you want to stay where you are, or you kind of built up to the level that's right for you, that's fine. But let me just show you while we're here, the kind of next level up from that number 4 stretch. So, one foot comes up and crosses over exactly the same as we did before, but then this time we're going to roll to bring the sole of this foot down onto the floor. And that's giving a much bigger stretch now. If that's too much for you, then just stay in your normal number 4 stretch. I'll just show you on the other side. Cross the leg over, and again you're rolling to bring the sole of the foot down towards the floor, and it gives a massive stretch. But if it's too much for you, then stay either here or here. It's just good to have options. Okay, so that is it for your video number 1 for our Build Yourself a Butt in October challenge. Any questions, you know where I am. Thank you.